Is oral sex or anal sex okay within marriage? Are these God-given desires or a flashback of a struggle with porn?
That's a great question. And I think questions like that are difficult, obviously, because the Bible doesn't address it directly, right? Like there isn't that verse that we can reference on oral sex or anal sex in the Word, at least that I'm aware of or that I've found in my study. And so typically with questions like this, I always like to start with the fact that where you land on that is a very personal thing between you and the Lord. Always at the end of the day, like you're not answering to your pastors, you're answering to God, right? And so to really be intentional to do the work and seek the Lord out and figure out kind of where you land and what feels congruent to you in your relationship with God and your relationship with your spouse, right? With that being said, I do feel like I heard my coworker one time talk about like you have to find in relationship, you have to find the spaces where like God says it's okay, you say it's okay, and your spouse says it's okay. Right? And where all three of those circles overlap, like a triple Venn diagram, where all three of those circles overlap is where you want to land in your sexual relationship. So if you have one spouse that says like, no way, I believe oral sex is bad and gross and I'm not interested in it, that's where you have to land. That can't be a part of the sexual relationship because all parties need to feel honored and respected and safe in that space. Right? Or, there's some sexual things that some people engage in, like threesomes or swinging, that I personally do believe that the Bible or the Lord like wouldn't be okay with, right? And so that maybe falls out of the realm of what's okay in that. In regards to anal sex, again, I feel like still follow that same process of does that feel okay inside of me? Does that feel okay with my partner? Something that I think is interesting in a way that we kind of understand God is through his creation, right? The anus isn't really designed for that type of thrusting. It's not designed for that. The vagina is very flexible and it can get bigger, it can get smaller. It's kind of designed to have that type of pressure and thrusting and activity, and it can still recover after that. It doesn't cause damage. With the anus, it's not designed for that. And so if there is a lot of that kind of thrusting, that kind of activity and penetration, that it does cause damage over time. And so that's something to maybe keep in mind in that. Kind of looking to creation of how God designed things. But again, that ultimately at the end of the day is between that couple and the Lord. So I tend to not be super prescriptive on some of those things, but because it's such a personal and intimate thing. In terms of the flashbacks of a struggle with porn, I would be really curious about that for that person. That can be a piece of it. Is maybe some unhealthy messaging around sex and sexuality that people have gotten from pornography or kind of the world's influences, for lack of a better word. So I think that that's something that I would encourage that person to explore a little bit and kind of do some internal work and say, where is this coming from inside of me, right? And what do I feel, what does honor the Lord and what does honor my spouse in that?
No, that makes sense. And I know, and like how it really is a lot of communication, a lot of even bringing things to God and like wanting to see God's heart, God's intention for all these things, for why we get oxytocin in certain ways, like why, how we're going to have sex together, how we're going to connect together, and really seeking out like God's viewpoint and then bringing it down to between you and your spouse. Okay, like what's our comfort level, what's our safety within that. And then, and then obviously, kind of figuring out from there, depending on people's backgrounds, like where the porn can come into play or not, you know, depending on someone's exposure or not. So
Yeah. And I think like something that I always like to encourage couples with as well is, as humans, we're made in the image of God, right? And God is a creative God, right? Like I'm sure there's like all kinds of things in a sexual relationship that the Lord is like, that would be awesome, guys, go try that, right? Like, go have fun, kids. Like, you know, and so there's that piece too. Like, those were two very, very specific questions that I wanted to speak to, but uh that my responses aren't meant to be restrictive, that is a space between two people that gets to be so full of life and creativity and exploring and like just enjoying each other in new ways and finding and discovering new ways to like keep that space kind of lively and fresh, I think is good too. And so just in that, know that there is a lot of creativity in that space, and it's a good thing to kind of explore and figure out what does work.
yeah, and I love that there is a lot of freedom within that, because in theory there should be a lot of safety in that, like how God designed marriage is to be this very safe place where you can be creative, free without judgment. So, you know, you can kind of stumble around like as you're figuring things out or trying to have fun. It can look like you're kind of fun, you know, for each other, because it's safe.